Hi everyone. So as we spoke on Wednesday, here's the video that I promised for you guys. Sorry it took me a little bit longer than expected, but we are going to go ahead and review just a little bit of what we spoke about and start getting those dim styles, text styles, and leader styles started. So the first thing we want to do is you can go ahead and open your old CAD 101 template, or you can create a new template. For me, right now, it would be a lot easier if I just went ahead and modified an old template. So we are gonna go ahead and start a new drawing. I'm just gonna go ahead and open a file, right? I'm gonna find my old CAD 101 template. The one way that I can go ahead and find it, normally it'll be a DWG that we're trying to look for, but we're not trying to find that, so we're going to change the file type to a DWT. Remember, that's a drawing template. So from there, I'm going to go ahead and look at it. Here's my CAD 102 template. I'm going to click open. Right. This is what I have. We're going to make this full screen so you can see the tabs at the bottom, right? I already created an A size, a B size, a C size, and a D size from previous classes. But if you don't know how to go ahead and do that, we're going to go ahead and modify this. Now, my template right now is a little bit modified because originally I set this up with a different PDF. So it looks a little bit wonky. Don't worry about it if this is what happened when you modified your page. So to modify this layout, we're going to go ahead and go to the Page Setup Manager. One way to access your Page Setup Manager is to right-click on a tab and click on Setup Page Manager, which brings us to the Page Manager dialog window. Here I have a variety of ones that I've already created. The one I'm looking for is my A size, right? It should say 8.5 by 11. If it doesn't, we can go ahead and modify that. So I'm going to go ahead and click modify. I'm going to make sure that the right paper size is selected. By default on Adobe PDF, it's a letter size, which is still, once again, 8.5 by 11. Make sure it says layout. And like I said, if your layout looked a little funky outside of the hidden lines, right, we can preview this. And you see how it's just moved down, right? And you're like, oh God, that doesn't look right. How do I fix this? A quick solution is to change it from what to plot, change it to extend, and center it. So see, if I go back again, you can see how it's fully enclosed, right? There's a dark border around here. And how we previewed it, it was to the side, right? Well, now pay attention to this area. Once I change it to extends and center, see how now it's centered into that page? It gives you a quick little preview. So here's the preview. It is now nice and centered, right? That's good. All right, so we're going to go back and we're going to click OK. So now that's applied to this A size layout. So now it'll be continuously centered and not completely off the page, right? We're going to click close. Even though how we opened it earlier, remember how this was completely down here and then this border was just touching the edges. Now it's automatically been centered for you. Okay. Okay, so like I said, you're going to need an A size. That's going to be 8.5 by 11. A B size, that's 11 by 17. A C size, that is 18 by 24. A D size, that's 24 by 36. Go ahead and create those page layouts for your template. Alrighty. Let's go ahead and click OK and close. So by that time, you should already be rocking and rolling with your prototype. You should already have selected a discipline. If you haven't selected discipline, please have a discipline by Monday. After you selected discipline, you're going to go ahead and change the units, or okay, you're going to change the units to your prototype. So I'm going to go ahead and type in units. Right now, I am currently in architectural. Uh, I'm just used to architectural because that's what I've been doing for the past 6 years. Yours might be different. So if you are picking mechanical, right, you can go ahead to mechanical. You're going to change your precision to 0.003, right? Decimals, you can just leave it as this. If you are doing civil, right? Mm, yeah, leave it as a 1/8. Decimals is still the same. Um, the only thing that might change, especially when it comes to a site plan, is that you might need to use surveyor units. So please keep that in mind. You don't have to use survey units the entire time, but know that this is an option that can change later on with your template or with the specify drawing. So for that, right now I'm just going to keep it as decimals. Everything else should be fine. Um, I'm going to change back to my architectural because that's my discipline. I'm going to click OK, uh, cancel. Doo-doo-doo-doo. Yeah, that's fine. And click OK. All right. So what we want to do next is set up your textiles, right? So for each discipline, there is a specific font that you're going to need to use. For your annotated text, remember the text height has to be a 0.125 or 1/8. So to create a textile, you're just going to simply go to the annotate tab and you're going to select this little flyout, right? We're going to click on that flyout. And since I already have an annotated text, I'm just going to name it annotext. You should name it annotext as well. For architecture, you're going to leave it as city blueprint, right? Change this text height to 0.125. Okay. Everything else stays the same. If you're doing mechanical, I'm actually going to change this, and since I will need a mechanical annotation, click OK. For mechanical, honestly, I just want you guys to leave it at Arial, right? You can type A, simple Arial, no other type of font, okay? That's it. Not black, not regular, not gothic. Just leave it as Arial and change it to 0.125. Um, for a civil one, I'm gonna, yes, leave that. I'm just gonna name this as civil anno, right? For each discipline, you're just gonna name it as anno text. So you're only gonna pick one textile for your discipline. I'm showing all three so you guys know exactly what you need to do. All right, for civil, I do believe I left it as Roman, so you can go ahead and go with an R, look for the RO, right? And we are going to go with, and double check what was going on. That Roman really didn't look right. So for civil, what I want you to do is utilize the Roman S underscore IV25. All right. This way you have that set up. This one's a lot cleaner than the original assignment that I was talking about. So I'm going to click OK or cancel, right? So this is how the civil text will look like. Now, in order for your text to appear and come through and be the right size, make sure that you set up a annotative scale or a scale to your actual model space. This way, when you're drawing, you know what text side's going to look like, and you know that in your drawing things look right, so that when you go back to your viewport, you know that there should be text. You know how the text is going to look like, and nothing's going to change. So every single time that you're working with an annotative object or text, make sure you apply a scale to your model space. Okay. I normally set up mine depending on what it is. So if it is a residential floor plan, I will set up either a 1/4 or a 1/16 or a 1/8. You know, that is both for like residential and commercial. Those are your three typical scales that you normally use. For mechanical, sometimes you are just at a 1-on-1 scale. But if you're dealing with something larger, make sure that you're adding that scale first and you're comparing how your text looks like, okay? So I'm going to change all three so you see which ones, the difference between your font styles. So the first one was civil. Your second one, this is the architectural one. And now I'm going to change this one to the mechanical one, right? So you can see there's a clear distinction between all three, right? This way, when I'm grading, I know exactly what discipline it is that you're doing, not just by looking at the scale, but at least looking at your annotations. All right, so last two things that we have to do is setting up those dim styles, okay? So to go ahead and, continue on with the creation of dim styles, you can either type in dim, D-I-M, style, or you can go ahead and go into this flyout under the annotate tab and go ahead and create a new dim style. Now, I already started working on my architectural dim style. Make sure you name it anno underscore arc underscore dim. If you're doing mechanical, anno underscore mech underscore dim. For the civil, since I created a copy from the previous one, make sure you just go with anno civil underscore dim, okay? So I'm going to walk through real quick what you need to do for your architecture. And then side by side, we're going to work through the mechanical. There's generally just one or two differences between both dim styles. Primarily will be your units and your line and symbols are going to change between both of them, but everything else should be right along. So I'm going to go ahead and modify my architecture, or I can start with a new one. Same thing with the dim style, create new. If you are creating a new one, make sure that you have an annotative scale and that it's checked. If it's not, it won't be annotative. Okay, so I'm going to modify my architectural one, and I'm just going to go from left to right so you guys know exactly what you need to do. So for the lines in the architectural dim styles, make sure nothing really changes. Everything's by block, by layer. Beyond tick's going to be at 0. Base spacing is going to set to a 1/8. This is just basically saying that there is enough room between your spacing within text and also your drawing. Okay. Everything else should stay as is. The only thing that will change is your extension beyond dims and your offset origin. And so that one we're going to change to 1/8 or 0.125. So for a side-by-side comparison, you can see that nothing really changed from mechanical to architectural. When I say also architectural, this is the same dim style you will use for a civil discipline, right? So nothing changes from architectural to civil. Everything's still the same. Mechanical, instead of your baseline being at a 1/8, you're going to go 0.50. Your extent beyond dim is going to be at a 0.0125, and your offset origin is going to be set to a 0.025. Okay. Next, we're going to set up the arrows and symbols for architecture. Make sure that you change it to an architectural tick, right? Make sure you leave your leader to a closed field. Now, this might be something that had changed over the years, but for some reason, the leader tick right here, it doesn't change. It's still an architectural tick. I tried everything to change it, but it still doesn't do it. Just make sure just leave it as a closed field. Arrow size at a 1/8. Center marks at a 1/8. Break size at a 1/8. Jog should be at 44. The arc length symbol, make sure that is placed above dimension text, okay? For the mechanical, right? Everything is pretty much set at a 1/8, right? And everything is close-filled arrows. Arrow size 0.125, center marks at a 0.0625, break line 0.125, and the arc length symbol should be preceding dimension text. Next, we're just going to go ahead and verify our text, right? Since I'm doing architectural, I went ahead and just did my anal text. Yours should be anal text as well because you picked the discipline, right? So that discipline will have that font, which you named anal text, right? So same thing with mechanical. See, nothing changed. Everything's set to white. Your text is set to white. Your fill color, it should be none. The only difference between architecture and mechanical is that in mechanical, everything's centered and it reads left to right. Architectural, you are above vertical and centered on horizontal. Uh, Offset dim line is 0.090 in mechanical, and offset dim line is 0.125 or 1/8, right? The next change will be your text alignment. So here, what simply happens is how your text alignment will be justified to your dimension, right? So for mechanical, make sure that it's horizontal. That means it's right here. It's not above. It's right centered. For architecture, I know that we normally do align with above dimension, but what happens with your leader is that it is placed above your dimension. And so sometimes it's just reading straight shot from that. For this case, we're just going to change it to ISO alignment. So now what happens is that that leader dimension is now being kept and it has a landing for it. Okay? Uh, Lastly, two more things will be primary fit. So with the primary fit, all you're going to do for architecture, you're going to go ahead and pick best fit, which is the first option, right? Text placement, we're going to set that over dimension line with leader and make sure you have the annotated text selected. For the mechanical aspect, um, we are simply going to change two things, actually one thing. We're still going to keep it as best fit. We are going to go ahead at the text alignment. We're going to do beside dimension line instead of over line dimension, okay? And last thing that we have to do is just go ahead and change the primary units. So for mechanical, this is very easy. Make sure you change that to a mechanical unit, right? Your precision set up to a 0.03 and everything else just stays the same. Your angular dimensions, this will primarily be prescribed by the drawing problem that you might have. For right now, we can just leave it at 0.02, right? And we are going to suppress the zero, the leading zero. So say you have a dimension, or I mean, sorry, an angle that is 0.38, right? Normally we would see it at a 0.38, but for this one, it's a lot cleaner to just have at least those two digits, so it just would read at 0.38. Make sense? For architectural, same thing, you know, change your architectural units. Honestly, just leave your precision to a 1/4. It is a nice, rounded number. Okay. We're going to leave fractional as horizontal, and we are going to suppress this leading 0 feet. So instead of, I mean, if you uncheck it, it will go right ahead and say 0 feet dash 4 inches, or it'll be, 4 inches alone. So this is also one of those things that will be prescribed by the drawing problem. So make sure you know how to activate the leading zero and how to deactivate the leading zero, which right here we can go ahead and start doing that. Also, if you have, let's say, just 1 foot dash 0 inches, right, you can always suppress the zero, but don't do that. We can just do that. Same thing with the precision that we were talking about with mechanical here. Please suppress the leading zero. Alrighty, so that's pretty much all you have to do for the dimension styles. Um, so now we can honestly just start, testing this out. So by testing this out, I mean, let's see if it actually works. So I'm actually going to change the scale to a 1/2, right? So now I have a actual dimension. I am going to test this, right? I'm going to click, click, pull out. See, that's nice. Now I'm going to change my dimensions. I'm going to go with mechanical, right? I'm going to click, click. Oh no, that's a little sideways. So I'm going to turn on my ortho. You can do F8 or you can go ahead down at the navigation bar and change that. Click and click. Enter, and I'm still in my arc. So I can still change it, right? See, that's nice and changed. And let's say I really don't like how this is looking. You can do one or two things. You can either go back and modify your dimension style, or you go under properties. If you type in properties, this dialog box will turn on. I usually just keep mine docked to the side because it's a lot easier to go back and forth. Now, if you go here, let's see, there should be one that says precision. So under primary units, you can just change that to 0. Whatever have you, right? Let's say I actually want it to read that way, right? This is a little bit cleaner. Won't have too many zeros to go by, all right? And lastly, that's pretty much about it. Uh, One thing that we didn't cover is alternative units. Alternative units mainly just states if you're doing more of a part, mechanical part, and sometimes you do need a slight deviation, you can go ahead and modify that. If you go back to let's go to our mechanical, right? I'm going to modify that real quick. Here's tolerances, right? So this is one tolerance. Technically, this is one tolerance because you just gave it a primary unit. Here, it adds more information to it. There's a deviation, so it could be +1 or -1, and it's within that range that is acceptable to be able to, let's say, drill a hole. Um, there are limits, right? So even though we have, let's say, for example, it says 1.016, right? That is a limit in which you can't go beyond that, right? You can change your limit precision just like we did everything else. There is a basic one, which essentially just makes it, hey, here's my dimension, right? You can change the dimension position. It's all really based on what the drawing problem will ask you. This is one way to change it, to be able to adapt it to that drawing problem. Or once again, you can go in and type in properties, or you can go into the properties dialog box, right? I'm going to click here, right? I'm going to go all the way down where it says tolerances. Right here, I'm just going to add a deviation, right? I'm going to say 1, right? So the top number is actually technically your negative limit, right? When it comes to this, is what I really mean. So see it lower, lower, upper, upper. They have it a little bit reversed. So if you're looking for that deviation when it comes to a drawing problem, this is exactly where you can find it. You can also modify this as needed. It won't necessarily apply it to every single dimension that you created. Remember, here is when you're just using one instance and it's not being manipulated or transferred over to any of those. But say I want this type of dimension style to be applied to this, but I don't have that style. Another thing that we can do is actually go ahead and type in match properties, right? Here it's telling me, okay, I want whatever properties I have in this dimension, and now I want to paint them over to this one, right? So you see now they have the same type of settings. So this might be really helpful, especially when you're working on a mechanical drawing that you don't have those tolerances set, nor do you have a style, but you modified one. So you technically have one. So you can use that within the match properties.